Thank you. Apologies for being 7 minutes late. I'd like to call this new 2014 first JEA board member. Would everyone please rise for a moment of reflection, and then Mr. Wyman will lead us in the pledge. So if you can take a few moments for a moment of reflection. Thank you. Mr. Wimbush?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Board members, you have in front of you the agenda. I'd like to have a motion for the agenda as amended. It's been moved in second to approve the agenda as amended. Just for the record, item Roman numeral 3B3 was revised from information to action. All those in favor with the amended agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, show it unanimously. Safety briefing. Lee Green, Safety Manager in Health Services. Welcome.
Good afternoon, thank you.
Good afternoon.
I will be providing the safety briefing today for the board meeting. If we do have to evacuate in the event of the emergency, it's behind me to the left of the elevators. Our assembly point for the 8th floor here in the tower is actually the parking lot across from the JEA motor pool. It's at the south side of Church Street between Main and Ocean. Your safety buddy will be the person to your right. If you have a medical condition that you feel like you cannot evacuate safely, please let them know so they can help you out. Mike has agreed to call 911, and Ted has agreed to call security for me. We do have fire extinguishers on the floor. We won't use those unless we have to use them to get out safely. If you'd please put your cell phone in silent position, that would be great. And the restrooms are also behind me to the right of the elevator. I wanted to give you guys a little background and some of my experience coming here to JEA. I'm actually working on my 6-month anniversary. I'm here as the manager of Safety and Health Services. I report directly to Bruce Dugan, who's the Director of Organizational Performance Improvement, and Bruce reports to Angie Hires, who's the Chief Human Resources Officer. I come to JEA, I started my career really at Georgia Power several years ago. I come here with a little over 18 years of experience. I got my foot in the door at Georgia Power, met a mentor who really guided me throughout my career. I spent a little over 10 years in the Atlanta area, had an opportunity to work for Lockheed Martin. I worked again for Georgia Power and Mirant, the independent side of Southern Company. I spent about 4 years at Georgia Pacific, and from there I actually moved to New York City. I was getting married, my husband lived in New York, and we decided it might be nice to live in the same state for a while. So I went to work for Veolia in their waste to energy division, so I've worked some in that side of power production. From Veolia, I worked for Fluor Global Services at an IBM data center site. My husband was actually transferred to the Jacksonville area in October of 2012. And so when I came here, obviously he and our family came to be with him, and I sort of started looking around for some opportunities and found the position at JEA and felt like it would be a perfect fit, and so far it has been, so I'm happy to be here. I have an undergraduate degree from Auburn University, so I was a little disappointed the last few weeks, especially being a Florida resident. It was a little harder pill to swallow, but I'm getting over it. I have a master's from University of Alabama at Birmingham, and I have a MBA from Georgia State. I actually went back to school when I was at Georgia Pacific part-time through tuition reimbursement, which I know we have at JEA too, so great to take advantage of those programs. I'm happily married to a wonderfully crazy husband who also happens to be in the safety field, and so we do sit around the dinner table and talk about safety, which I know seems probably weird to all of you, but it's nice to have someone to throw and bounce things off of. We're very blessed to have 2 beautiful daughters. My oldest just turned 2, so you can imagine, or my youngest just turned 2, my oldest is 4. So most of our hobbies are centered around, trying to keep up with those 2. But we've certainly enjoyed Northeast Florida area. We love the beaches. We love being outside and enjoying the sunshine all year long, like we did yesterday on the holiday. So it's a little about me.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Ladies, we'll look on presentation comments, plan for zero. Leah Green.
Yeah, also happens to
Thank
be
you.
me.
Save time by being up there.
Yes,
Help us make up
exactly.
for the time we were late. Apologize.
Exactly, no, that's okay. I am here today to present some strategies and areas that we're focusing on for safety for this fiscal year. I wanted to start off the presentation by reminding and reiterating our safety vision here at JEA, which we have now and have had for many years, a safety vision of 0 incidents, and I think it's important to remember that. And we talk about 0, and in some cases, it's difficult to convince people that 0 is achievable. As a safety professional, obviously I believe that, I've seen it happen, but in some cases we have difficulty convincing people that's achievable, and so what I've found that works well and had some good experience doing is really focusing on planning for 0. And I'll explain a little more about that concept in a bit. I was fortunate, right after I started, someone from Jane Upton's group actually came to me and said, we were interested in putting a little clip out on our News from JEA YouTube site. She said, would you be interested in helping us come up with something for safety? And I said, would I? This is a great opportunity. We'd love to. And so I told her, I said, I want to introduce this planning for 0 concept. I have a few ideas on how we could do it. And literally 2 or 3 days later, she came to me with this video clip. And I want to share it with you guys today. It's about 1.5 minutes, and then we'll discuss it for a bit when it's finished. So let's see if we can get it to play here.
This is how I plan for 0.
This is how I plan for 0.
This is how I plan for 0.
This is how we plan for 0.
Are we ready for our industrial stretching? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
This is how I plan for 0.
And we ground.
This is how I plan for 0.
This is how I plan for 0.
This is how I plan for 0.
So be a hero, plan for 0.
So again, I think what's important from this video and the message that we preach behind this is that it's the little things you do on a daily basis. It's clicking in the seatbelt, it's strapping in your harness, it's putting your phone away and paying attention. So that's really one of our main focus areas going forward is the planning for 0 concept. We also have a big effort to really go back and focus on the fundamentals. If any of you are familiar with a management system approach to safety, this really just boils down the management system approach and says these are 5 basic things that we can focus on. And part of the reason I like to boil it down is that hopefully people can grasp onto this and remember it and use it as they're out working. But planning being the first fundamental, again, going back to that planning for 0 concept, training, making sure our employees know what the hazards are that they're working on and making sure that we have the proper controls in place and they know what those controls are. And we're addressing this through formal training as well as sharing some lessons learned, and I'll show you an example of our safety alert process we have in a few minutes. Coaching, which is a big piece of safety, and that's making sure that all of our employees understand on a daily basis what our safety expectations are, because again, they can't meet those expectations if they don't know what they are. So making sure our supervisors, our foremen, our managers, our directors are all consistently reinforcing our expectations. Inspecting, we have some good processes at JEA for doing inspections. We have crew checks and facility checks and that sort of thing. Making sure that we are doing a great job with that. We have some opportunities for improvement there. And then fixing those. That sounds easy and basic, but at the end of the day, we have to have a process in place to make sure we're tracking those action items and closing them out in a manner that makes sure that we're getting done what we want to do. Quick review of the plan for 0 to give you guys an idea of what we did. We took, I looked for like the top 5 kind of riskiest areas within JEA. I ended up with 6. We've gone through a risk assessment process with those from the director level with managers to sit down with them and say, what are our biggest risks? And do we have the proper controls in place for those? And if we don't, we want to make sure that we do. Example of that would be if a group says, my biggest risk is falls, then we want to go through that process and say, well, what do we do to control that risk? If we're doing everything we can, that's great, let's move on. If we're not, those are the actions that we'll put in our plan for 0 and make sure that we're addressing going forward. I wanted to make sure that you were aware of our safety leadership structure. This again goes back to that management system approach. Very fortunate to work for a company like JEA where we have a great management team that supports what we're doing. We have the Corporate Safety Council, which meets. We meet about every 2 months. It's made up of our SLT. We have area safety committees. We have SHAPE representatives out in the facilities. And then, of course, we have my group, Safety and Health Services. Again, just to kind of summarize our safety strategies, really focusing on the fundamentals. We have worked at increasing our communication and marketing around safety to make sure we're branding safety, and we have some graphics around that and that sort of thing. Improving our corrective action tracking, implementing an observation and coaching program. We have some of that going on, but making that more formal, and improving our hazard identification process. And again, really focusing on those outcomes versus activity. This just gives you kind of a quick overview of some of the things we're doing. On the top left, you'll see some of our branding efforts and some of our graphics. You'll see the safety alert process, which we send these out for every recordable incident that we have, and a variety of near-miss incidents as well for that communication piece. The bottom left is a PASS award, which is a proactive way to recognize things that we're doing. And that's all I have today.
Thank you, Lee. Mr. Chairman?
Quick. First of all, yes, we all agree that safety is important and critical. And under the communication and marketing, I would suggest you, Jane, up and look and see if you can get some 30-second spots out of that 3-minute spot there. I thought that was very powerful stuff. I'm always spending your money. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Any other
Appreciate the
comments?
opportunity.
Thank you, appreciate it. Presentation, our 2013 Lyman Rodeo presentation. Mike Corbett, C&M Working Foreman. Welcome. We've been looking forward to this.
All right.
Our new rock stars. Our new rock stars.
No, we're not rock stars.
Yeah, you are.
No. First off, we have a couple things we want to do. First, we want to present to the board. This is actually the plaque that was for the 2013 rodeo that JEA hosted. And we put it in a nice picture frame, and all the participants of the rodeo have signed it. So we'd like to present this to the board, just something that you can remember us by, and just something that we can say thank you for the support that we get. Also, I have a letter that I would like to present to the board, and it is from Commissioner Adam Putnam. It's addressed to Mr. McElroy. It says, congratulations to you and the members of the JEA Lyman Rodeo team for winning the 2013 National Rodeo Championship. I hope you take a moment to celebrate your outstanding victory. Not only is winning this title a great honor, but it's a testimony to your hard work and perseverance. I look forward to hearing about your team's success in future rodeo competitions. Again, congratulations and keep up the good work. And the one thing that sticks out is where it says the hard work and perseverance. And from our side, we do put a lot of hard work into it, but from everyone involved in the rodeo, we'd like to say thank you for the support that we get from everyone in this room. We truly appreciate it, and we couldn't do it without you. So we consider it one big team. You know, when we're out there competing, it's not just about us, it's about the support that we get, and we just want to say thank you and for the support, because we know it's tough on our side, but it's also tough for, the things that go into it behind the scenes, with the traveling and everything that's involved. So we very much appreciate the support that we get.
Michael, thank you very much, and we want to say thank you to you. Do you all have the dates for next year?
Yes, the Florida Rodeo, the FMVA.
Wow, look at this. This is really cool. Yeah, come on, let's get this one, get the board. We can back up, the whole board. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. They'd rather see you than us. Come on.
Yeah, we'll just stand over there.
If we don't see you,
Want us standing too?
4 of us up here with you next year.
We can sit.
With that.
We can stay.
Come on, come on.
Okay.
Just one up.
You want to stand up?
Right? How's that? Is that good?
Long hold.
You all right?
Yeah. Watch the stairs, yeah.
Very good. Congratulations. Thank you, guys. What's the date now?
March 28th and 29th would be the FMEA. And then
Good.
the following weekend, the first week in April, is the APPA.
Really? Will y'all redo it here?
No, sir, it's in Ocala, and then the APPA is in Oklahoma City.
I'm gonna work on Putnam and come down for it.
That sounds good.
He's good. Good rodeo.
Thank you.
Okay. Comments, again, Mike, all y'all, thanks, guys. Make us proud, we appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, Mr. CEO, can we get that downstairs so we can get other people to see it?
Absolutely.
He left. Can we get, be kind of cool, Jane? I'm gonna spend your money a little bit. We've got these guys to sign. Was there, for the program, didn't we have a picture of these guys that participated? Can we get that? Yeah. Can we kind of, would you mind, see if we can get this so we can have the pictures so people, will know. They may not see the picture, but they'll recognize it. If we can get a picture of the guys who signed, or a frame next to it. Yeah, would we? So we can put it next to it so people see it. And let's put it downstairs so everybody will see it when they come in. Okay, cool. Great, thanks. Comments from the public? Do we have any comments? None. Great. Council liaison. That would be you, Mr. President. That would be you, Mr. Bishop.
Well, I'll be quick.
Welcome back.
Well, thank you. I will be quick and help you get back on schedule here.
Thank you.
But since the rodeo guys have left, I guess they don't really need to hear this, but just in the spirit of all of this, we have a commendation resolution working its way through council to congratulate them on their great victory. And at my first available opportunity, I want to have them there at the council meeting and publicly embarrass them by making them come up and accept it in person so that the whole city can congratulate them on what a fabulous job that they're doing. And again, congratulations to them, even though they're not here to hear it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Let us know when you're going to do that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman. Okay, board consideration, you have on Roman numeral 3 a consent agenda. Single motion are required for the approval. All right, we're going to do Roman numeral A1 requires action, 2 and 3 are provided for information. So we ask for a single motion that is divided in those two. A1.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion as stated, say aye. Aye. Opposed, show it unanimously. Thank you. We're on to Roman numeral B, strategic discussion action, sole source and energy procurement. Don McCarthy, Director of Supply of Chain Management. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Our first major strategic issue for the year. You set the bar.
This is very strategic. Good afternoon, everyone, board members. Roy, I've got a short presentation that will accompany an informational item that you have in your board packets. It looks like this. And if you'd like to refer to it.
Does it have a title on it?
It's called Sole Source and Emergency Procurement Report.
Okay.
And I've got
I'm the
about-
technical guy.
I've got
I don't have paper.
about 4 slides just to walk us through it. But
Why, do not be worried that your job IT is in danger with Mr. Roth Townsend here. You're in fine
John, I'm
shape.
with you.
yes, sir.
Good.
Ready. This report is submitted. Let's go down. This quarterly report is an informational item. It's submitted quarterly, and it's submitted to just provide added transparency over these procurement actions that do not go through our normal bidding process. The report comes with a memorandum cover page that talks to the data during the most recent quarter, and it's broken out by formal and informal awards. And then the supporting pages provide summary information over the past year and also detailed information for every formal sole source or emergency award that was made over the past year. If you look at the current report, during Q1 of FY14, we had $55 million of total formal awards. Of these awards, we had one formal sole source award for $295,000, one formal emergency award for $207,000. We had informal awards during the quarter that totaled $20 million, And of this total, there was one sole source for $32,000 and 37 emergency awards for $536,000. What I've got up on the slide just shows our activity over the past 4 quarters. And this is the data that we just walked through. And if you look, you'll see we have a percentage of the sole source awards as a percentage of the total awards, and that was just over 0.43%. The emergencies were at 0.98%, and so the total of both were at 1.4%. And you can see how this has trended over the last year. And you know, our 2% rate that we've been achieving compares very favorably to other utilities when we go out and benchmark that data. This slide just shows the 6 formal sole source and emergency awards that we made over the past year. I've highlighted in yellow the 2 that were new to this quarter that you haven't seen yet. The top award was made to Innovation Partners LLC for the work that Bill Kemp, that you're familiar with, is performing in support of our strategic plan implementation. Since Mr. Kemp was involved in the development of our strategic plan, it was considered to be in our best interest to have him involved in the implementation of the plan, which includes the accelerated corporation transformation model, which he was already familiar with. The second item is an emergency award that was made to Continental Field Systems for work discovered during a scheduled outage. We needed to complete this work after it was discovered during the outage. We actually received 2 bids for this work, but didn't have time to go through our formal process, so we label it a emergency award. This is the activity over the last year, the combined percentage of the sole source and emergency items as a percent of our total awards, and you can see that this process is stable and performing well. And that's all I have.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Questions, comments? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Real estate acquisition status report. Amir Azir, Director, Shared Services. No presentation.
No presentation.
Just information?
Just
It's in your,
information.
that's in your
There's no
board.
change.
Thanks.
No change.
Okay, Southside Property, RFD discussion, Nancy Kilgo. Welcome, Nancy.
Good
Director of our
afternoon.
Government Affairs.
Thank you. We wanted to come to the board and give an update and get your input on the Southside Generating Station property. Many of you are familiar with it either through your work on the board over time or just looking at it when you drive by in the community. We have about 35 acres that are vacant over to the east of the school board building on the south side of the river. We decommissioned a power plant in 2001, and then we did environmental cleanup and demolished the buildings. We've done 2 previous public offerings. The first one was a RFQ, RFP process, so that we got pre-qualified respondents and then chose from there to have proposals submitted. Both of those negotiations did not go forward with a contract, so we tried again in 2005. We did it on a straight bid situation, so we took the high bid and negotiated for about 2 years on the property. That was also not successful. That ended in about 2007, and since then, when the economy turned, especially real estate market, we have had people call off and on, but not a lot of serious interest. In about the last year, we've had quite a bit of interest of people saying, we'd like to make an offer, or we'd like to come talk to you about proposals. How can we do that? We've been advised by the Office of General Counsel that since there's been such a time lapse, that we need to do another competitive offering, especially since we've had multiple people asking us about it. So what we're asking you to do is consider us the timing to go out with another RFP. Attached to your board item is a draft framework that we put together. And we're suggesting that we would use a combination of quantitative, which would be straight price, and then items that people may come ask JEA to do during the negotiations that would cost money or bring the net amount down. And then qualitative factors, which would consider community development, economic development, such as job creation, capital investment. One of the things that we looked at all along the way was returning some of the property to the tax rolls to generate money for the city ongoing. And so you'll see a proposed list. We've said subject to change because we want your input. As we draft these, we've got to figure out a way to measure them fairly when we evaluate proposals if we go out. So the framework, again, includes some qualitative and quantitative measures, and now I'd just like to see if you have questions or specifics you'd like to know about.
Thank you, Nancy. To put us in the proper frame, I'm going to ask for a motion for the issuance of an RFP, including the quantitative and evaluation criteria. If you will read on Roman numeral 3B3, kind of talks about the important is the RFP will contain a statement that JEA reserves the right to make no award and to have the flexibility to negotiate specific terms with the successful bidder. I'm asking for a motion.
I'll make the motion. Is that the motion, or are you asking for one?
I'm asking for a motion.
I'd motion that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Any discussion? Nancy, thank you very much for bringing this. For the record, I think Nancy has very succinctly kind of raised the issue of the reason why we're coming back. We have not been successful in the past for a number of reasons, for a number of economic reasons, but for some reason, people said hope is not a strategy. However, we've been hoping that somebody would come back, and it was more than one. And so candidly, in meeting with the staff and with Paul, we just felt that we wanted to have a set forth of criteria. Since there's been multiple, we've had a number of people coming to us individually and coming to Paul, and we thought the best way to do this, level playing field, put it out there public, everybody take their best shot, but we wanted to do this. I will say that, Nancy, the group, your group has done an outstanding job. This is much more detailed than the last one that went out, if I remember correctly. But I do want to encourage the board for you to take some time in your fiduciary responsibilities to kind of look this over. Nancy has asked for our input. For those of us who have been around for a little while, this is probably one of the most premier pieces of property in Jacksonville. Of course, we would love it to go back on the rolls. But on the other hand is that we get one good bite at the apple with this about 40 acres. And so we want to do it right. If it's not going to work, we're not going to do it. But we want to get it out there and see what we can do. It'd be great to see some cranes on the skyline, but I think we want to do it in the proper way. So I appreciate this, but I would encourage the board, if you've got some thoughts after reviewing this, please get back with Nancy, but we want to go forth. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So it unanimously. Thank you, Nancy. Go forth, do good. Bi-monthly operations. Mike.
Good afternoon, Chairman.
Thank
members
you,
of the
sir.
board.
Welcome to you, and I understand Brian will follow you.
Yes, sir. And then Monica.
And then Monica.
Best for last.
Very good. Give him the $5. It's worth it, okay?
Yeah, good afternoon. Just a heads up, apologize for my voice. I'm getting over one of the bugs that's been running around. This is actually my second visit this season.
All this cold weather.
Yeah. Good for.
Wait till tomorrow morning.
If I get all choked up and can't finish, I put Brian Roach on standby as my lifeline to finish up. He knows my business as well as I do.
Whoa.
He does. I'm serious. He's amazing.
Get that in the record.
I've heard him say that.
That's 2 compliments. We heard earlier from Leah. Leah's been with us not quite a year now, and we're fortunate to have her, excited to have her on board. A lot of good things coming down the pike for JEA from a safety perspective. This is our safety chart for the company, off to a really tough start. We touched on this a couple months ago. We had 7 recordables in October. Our goal of 1.2 equates to 2 a month. We should be having 2 a month. We had 7 in October, 3 in November, 3 in December. Last month today's 2.6, we were at 3.0, so we are improving, positive trajectory. But this time last year, we had only had 8 recordables, and we've had 13 this year. The second section there under fiscal year 14 has the distribution of where those 13 are showing up year to date. On a positive note, the recordables we had in December were in the early part of the month. We finished the month 20 days straight without a recordable. And then prior to the end of last week, we had run another 15 or 16 days without a recordable. So we went almost a complete month, over a month without a single recordable. We had 2 last week. One was a twisted back getting down from one of our large piece of equipment. The other one was a fairly severe rear end injury. Our employee was rear-ended and wrenched the neck and whatnot. So those were the 2 latest ones we've had. But as you can see, we're at 2.6 year to date, and we will continue to track. The purple line, just for reference, is last year's month by month year to date, just from a comparison. We'll continue to work on that. For the electric system performance objectives, off to a good start through the first quarter. On the all-in dollars per megawatt hour, 92.30 is $3.17 better than budget, $1.08 better than target. On the bottom line, if you break it down into the fuel and the non-fuel, both of the figures are less than budget, fuel and the non-fuel. The non-fuel is also less than the target, which was the fiscal year 12 bogey that we had set up as we went through the strategic work. Our goal this year is to be flat against 2012. The fuel is $39.76 versus $38.40, so about a $1.42 higher at this point. If you look back in the history, that 38.34 and 12 was an all-time low, so that was kind of a bottoming out of the dollars per megawatt hour. Looking down at the bottom section, fuel revenues and expenses. Revenues are off from budget due to revenues being off from budget, down about $24 million. The expenses are off to a greater extent, $53 million, so you're getting a nice shift there from on the net from 12 budgeted to 41 or 29 favorable movement. $5 million under is the forecast for O&M and $9 million at this point through 1 quarter on the capital. So all in all, in pretty good shape. Not much to really talk about on this. Fairly flat and stable. The electric service quality really hadn't gotten a lot worse or a lot better through the first quarter. So our outage frequency and duration remain fairly flat. We have shifted to this new metric we've talked about in the past called Semi-5. It measures the unique customer addresses in terms of looking for the individual customers who have had too many outages in the last year. We put the bar at more than 5, and that number currently is running at 3%. That's a shift for us in terms of our past focus on electric service quality, and we plan on continuing to make a lot of progress on getting that number down, as well as the overall outages. Typical JEA customer sees 1.8 outages a year for a total outage duration of 69 minutes. Service availability in excess of 99.98. Transmission, we had a busy thunderstorm last year, but the transmission fault frequency has come down, and all of our other reliability metrics are in good shape. The generating fleet is performing well. Forced outage rate 1.3 year to date, better than last year, on par with the last couple of years. Certainly better than the benchmark here, the baseline of 08 through 11, and the environmental compliance is solid. We had one event in November, small event associated with some construction we had going on at Kennedy. Just to note, the generating fleet performed very, very well. The last cold snap we had 2 weeks ago, and really minimal issues. The only unit we had that had problems was actually a Plant Sharer, which is the coal unit up in Macon, Georgia, that we co-own with Florida Power and Light. It limped through the cold weather, but our fleet did well, as did the transmission distribution system. Minimal problems, and we are, of course, preparing for another cold snap this week. So everything's in good shape. Looking at the fuel fund, October, November, December, $5 to $6 million under budget in terms of expenses. Part of that is the fuel price being down and just doing well with the reliability of the fleet. Part of that is the unit sales being down. Looking at the 14 projection, We have brought the forecast down from a budget of 12.7 to below 12.2 for the year. And that gives us 524 in revenue, down a little bit, 483 on the expense, the surplus up at 41. We saw those numbers earlier. At this point, projecting a $149 million end-of-year balance. I'll just note that balance and the $41 million fiscal year 14 forecasted net is $15 million lower than it was this time last month. So just to kind of illustrate the degree to which that number can move around quite a bit, that is due entirely to the price of natural gas, both what we paid for it in this month and looking forward into the future, the NYMEX future curve. It's just come up that much in the last month. Fortunately, we can shift. We got a diverse fuel. We can shift away from gas when it's more expensive and more of our solid fuel, which is what we're doing today. Today, the Brandon Branch combined cycle natural gas unit is about $40. It's much more expensive than our solid fuel units, just because of where the price of gas is going. Solid fuel is running about $32 to $34. And again, combined cycle gas is $40. So again, this is our forecast is down at 177,966. It's about 50,000 less this month than last month, and that's just evident or reflected by the lower unit sales we saw in the first quarter. But currently 2.1% higher than last year actual on the forecast, below budget. Revenues are budgeted, forecasted at 5.5% higher. Operating expenses, predominantly O&M, non-fuel purchase, power and fuel, are about 4.7% higher. Net revenues fairly flat. Should be in good shape at this point on our important metrics, coverage, days cash. Expecting to be down at 75% debt to asset ratio by the end of the year and paying down $200 million in debt. Our calculated R&R OCO at 103 is higher than what we plan on spending, so that's a positive variance as well. One more slide. There's a change on this slide this month. We used to be 7th from the bottom, we're now 6th from the bottom. 6 of the utilities on this slide had rate increases that hit this month. One of those was Clay Electric. So Clay Electric used to be to the left of us, and they've jumped over to the right of us. So we're thanks to that, one slot to the left. And just for interest, FPL had a $5 increase that went into place in January. TECO had a $1.34 per 1,000 kilowatt hour increase this month. They're still to the left of us, but they have had increases. I mentioned Clay Electric at $5. The three on the right, not sure where they were before, but Duke Energy just had a $10 per month increase. Gulf Power just had a $15 per month increase. Gainesville's rate just increased $17.50. These are a combination of fuel and base. The last one, Gainesville, is purely fuel, and that's the biomass plant rolling in.
Was that 17 per month?
$17.50.
Per month?
Yes, per 100,000, per 1,000 kilowatt hour.
Per 1,000.
Per thousand.
So the people to the right of us are going up, and the people to the left of us are going up and catching us, and we did have one utility that passed us this month. Questions?
Wow, that's some significant increases. Just curiosity, when we had when we got bumped with the cold 2 weeks ago, what was did we get through that? Any peaks, anything out of the norm, or were we pretty much ready?
We were ready to go. We did have, we had minimal issues. We did have, we wanted more natural gas than we could get due to off-system issues and on-system issues. So we were burning, it was cheaper to burn oil and diesel than it was to go to the market. To the extent gas was available, it was $50. It was very, very expensive. On the first day, too, Georgia had a lot of problems. Over 2,000 megawatts normally flow from north to south. That first morning, 2,200 megawatts was flowing north from Georgia, from Florida north up to Georgia. So they had a lot of problems up to the north of us. we were able to buy a little bit cheaper, so.
They in south, up in the western part of North Carolina, that morning, North Carolina was -9. They weren't prepared for all that up in North Georgia.
And a lot of system issues, yeah.
Major issues.
It's hard to keep equipment running at those temperatures.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Brian?
Ryan?
There you go.
I'll preface it, the water sewer business is doing well, but I won't have as great news as Mike did. You think about these 3 or 4 other utilities that went up double-digit rate increases, and the electric staying steady here, and favorable fuel, that's really good news. And then Monica saves the best news for last, but we'll go through a pretty good steady report for water wastewater. On the dollar per kgal, what I like to look at in the water sewer is a blended cost between the 2 blue boxes. Water forecast is $4.29 per 1,000 gallons. So what that equates to is about for every $1 million you spend in the water sewer business, it's 3 cents of that. And then on the sewer side, $8.23. So for about every $1 million in the sewer system, expenditures in a year, adds about 4 cents to that number. So if you save $1 million instead of $8.23, I'll come back with $8.19 next month. And we're looking about every month, hopefully come back with a $500,000 to $1 million favorable number each month. So we plan on making that 429 in the low 420s and 823, kind of around 820. Blended together, the sewer's over this year, but blended together, both numbers together, you're better than our target and better than our budget, and our target being FY12. So, certain years we're going to spend more. I think Mr. Bauer asked a couple months ago, why is water greater than sewer? I believe the biggest issue is more the FY12 baseline. We had that large total water management plan. We spent a significant amount of money, $50 to $75 million over a couple of years on water transfer across the river. We completed those projects. So we had more of a heavier expenditure in water during that major project. Right now we're more into steady R&R type projects and smaller one-off projects than the large major ones we had before. So blended costs are well. Financials, you look at the bottom in green, we are forecast to be $8 million under right now in the O&M capital combined. Water sewer is certainly a lot simpler on the financial side. There's no fuel, no non-fuel purchase power, no joint agreements. We have O&M and capital and debt service and city contribution. The debt service is 120, city contribution is 20 million, those are set. So we really manage the O&M and capital. O&M is looking to be at least $3 million under. I suspect that number will even improve as we go throughout the year. And then the capital, $5 to $10 million under budget this year.
That's in 15.
The next slide are the customer operational type system metrics, which we won't spend much time on it. Unplanned water main outages. Overall, for the year, we have 641 customers have been lost water during a main outage, a main being a large water main 8 inches or greater. There are customers that might lose water sewer if the service to a house is cut, whether it's on their side or our side, but these are the main outages. Similar to feeders would be on the electric side when large outages. So we're doing well there. Distribution pressure, incidents of less than 30 PSI are minimal and continues to trend downward. That's what we want to see. And the customer response time, when customers do have challenges, whether it's on where they need us because the water pipe is leaking on their side, or when there is a leak on our side, we're looking at 63 minutes average response time, about 2,000 tickets a month. We do a good job with that. We're also looking at ways how to save money in that operation too, but without hurting that metric. So we'll monitor that as we go.
This is going to be under this part here. This is where they're going to kick in.
This next one we'll spend a couple minutes on. This is more the environmental compliance side. JEA, or CUP, or consumptive use permit through the St. Johns River Management District, is a annual calendar year basis, not fiscal year basis. And we averaged 100 million gallons a day last year. And we expect 100 million gallons a day this year is sort of the forecast. Our limit is 127 MGD. So we're fine at this point in time. We have no concern about meeting our CUP. But we do have a concern is that St. Johns River Management District has issued a draft water supply plan on December 12th. And there's a series of public meetings over the next several weeks, and then there's a response period through February 20th. And JEA is putting together some talking points. We will be attending these meetings. We also have a formal response as JEA as an individual utility and also through a North Florida utility group. And one of some of the concerns in this draft water sewer plan from the district was only 2 years ago, JEA spent several years to get this CUP requirement to secure our resource. And now there's looking at some concerns from the district that their projections would be that they'd be more concerned about water use, whether it's Jacksonville, whether it's the Northeast Florida region, or the entire state. And we want to make sure we communicate right here in Jacksonville, in the JEA service territory. We are maintain aquifer, and there are not large concerns here. We certainly want to improve our reclaim, and we will work with them. Our concern is that we don't want to make sure we put large amount of expenditures for programs that aren't needed, and the draft plan right now has several large projects on that. So we'll be updating over the next several months about this as we speak. The next one, Nitrogen Discharge River, JEA's done a real good job. The Buttman project that we, I think it was last May, we went to the board and did a highlight of showing some of the construction we had at Buttman, our largest plant. We had 2 out of our 4 clarifiers out of service. So last year, we actually hit 760 tons of nitrogen to the river. We expect this year to be projected to be 622 tons. That construction has worked 3 or 4 months ago. We're back running as we planned, even to the point where we are actively working with the city on water quality trading credits. The city is looking at acquiring 43 tons of that 720-ton permit from us. If we proceed with that, which JEA has offered that, we're moving aggressively there with the city. It will actually lower our permit from 720 to 677. So over the next 12 months, we'll be working with the city on that and with the DEP on our permit. The bottom right, the slide looks simple, 20, 25, 28, 29, 37 SSOs. The last 5-6 years, we're trending in the same range this year, 6 year to date through the quarter, which would turn out to be 24. It's really a measurement showing the great investment that's been done in the system over the last decade. Also, the measurement, I think you look at 2 things. One's the pump stations. We have sight in our control center right now. We can see the level of all our 1,300 pump stations. And that was a critical project years ago that we continue to maintain. And the rehab in the trunk system, whether it's the urban core or throughout force mains, just the rehab program that we did, the pipe burst that was done 10 years ago, that has worked well, and we'll continue to monitor our most susceptible pipes as we see today. And with all the pipelines we have, 8,000 miles of pipeline, there's always challenges, but we monitor the most susceptible ones to make sure we rehab them in time. So we're doing good on the environmental front. Slide similar to the electric. What I like to look here is the top left on the numbers. We're basically going to forecast in 35 billion gallons of water and 25 billion gallons of sewer. There might be some rounding one way or the other. And when you do that, it produces $387 million of revenues. So that number might switch a little bit, several billion dollars of revenues one way or the other. Fortunately, in the water sewer, we have 40% of our revenues come from fixed charges, or service availability charges are fixed, and 60% are volume or variable. And we're looking at how we can maintain a better rate structure in the electric system, and it's very critical that we did that in the water wastewater system several years ago. Then the next thing to look at is our water down. Our sales are down 3.4% year to date compared to last year. And last year was low. Last year, 33 billion gallons was the lowest it's been in over a decade. And we're 3.4% down. We were, I think, 6 or 7% down last month. So the month of December had some favorable unit sales. The largest item is irrigation, 24% down. People are not watering the yard. I go back, I always forget it was May 15th or May 16th, 2012. That's when the rain started. It's been raining steady since then. One day I'm going to go look at the score. Yeah. And I got to say, give a plug. My brother gave us a wonderful Christmas present. I have a rain gauge in my front yard now, big so we look at that, and I don't know if he did it for my work or just something good for the family. So we love the rain gauge. We look at it every day pulling out of the driveway. O&M expenses, $128 million. We plan on coming in lower than that this year, but we're last year was 121. I suspect we'll probably come in the mid 120s, 123, 124 by the end of the year, if there's no major issues. And the capital, 105. I think similar to the electric, the key is the 105, the bottom blue box, is we're bringing in 119. You see a little faint gray line. We're bringing in 119 to deposit in the capital funds. We're taking out 105. We need that because the next 2 years, we're going to have larger capital expenditures we're bringing in. We're going to expand our Blacksford plant, and we're going to need the extra capital that we're bringing in this year to help fund that for the next 2 or 3 years. That's going to be a major project on the south side of town. The metrics look great. And then we're going to pretty well say that for the next 5 years. The water sewer business is steady, and the stable, and the metrics of 2.3x. It looks like, unless something major happens, we should have good metrics over the next several years. The next slide don't have as much good news as Mike having this, but we have 9 utilities on the left that we've been benchmarking with for the last several years, and 8 on the right. I look forward to telling you the difference one day soon, where it's at least 9 on the left and 8 on the right. But we'll continue to make sure we keep our rates competitive. And I got 5 seconds to hand off to Monica. She's got a lot of good news. Make sure I get the slide. You good?
I'm good,
All right.
thank you. Okay, well, I am excited to share with you today. We have new J.D. Power information that actually is not showing up on the slide, and it came after everything went out to the board. And so I will gladly share with you that we got our Wave 2 results, which means we're halfway through our 2013 residential customer satisfaction, and we improved 17 points from where we finished 2013. That made us, right now, unofficially ranked at 58 out of 138 utilities, which puts us at our goal for 2014, which is in the second quartile. So we're very excited about that. Specifically, I also, for the second quartile wave, the raw score for that wave was 671 points. That is a record high for JEA. We have never received that high of a customer satisfaction rating from our customers in any of our waves. So that was very exciting. And we improved in every single driver of satisfaction. So that was just fantastic, with several of the drivers for Wave 2 earning first quartile rankings, including customer service, billing and payment, communications, all moved into the first quartile for Wave 2. Customer service is in the first quartile year-to-date overall, as is billing and payment. And so just really fantastic results and a testament to just the focus and work that the entire organization is making to better serve our community, to better serve our customers. It's common to see movement in one driver. It is very unique to see movement in every driver with the movement. So we're very excited. We are definitely enjoying and celebrating, yet we are still busy at work because we know that we still have the needle to move. We have 2 waves left for this year and to maintain that momentum. And so we're excited about that.
Monica, how do you, when you share this with the team, I mean, I understand it's being cascaded and everybody is a part of that. But when you get something, how do you present that back to your team, and how do they cascade it? Because that's pretty significant. I mean, that is a moment for celebration.
Absolutely.
How do you do it, and what was the reaction?
First of all, the reaction was a lot of high fives, wow, hugs. My favorite was, how come you're not doing cartwheels down the hall? So I think people are very excited about that and recognizing the work. We did put a News You Can Use out, which is an electronic communication to all of our employees, recognizing them, thanking them, and congratulating them. In our strategic planning session next week, we'll also be rolling that out, and then in our management meetings, we'll be sharing that. Right now, our research team is doing the detailed analysis of the data. Once we get 2 waves worth of data, we have enough data in there where we can really start analyzing the trends and seeing where did we really see positive movement, where do we still have opportunities. We get to start looking at some of the comments that customers are making. So we're analyzing that, and in about 2 weeks we'll be prepared to roll that out and share a little more there. So, as far as our customer solutions, we've shared that one of our goals for this year, we've set goals for all of our programs, and we are working to increase our participation, and so we are just continuing to monitor that. Right now, e-billing and budget billing are the 2 programs that we are not on track for, but we have a game plan for e-billing with the campaign coming up that we believe will get us on track. Budget billing, we have some analyzing to do. We have been communicating and marketing that, and it just, we are not keeping up with where the industry is and where most a lot of customers sign up for programs like budget billing. We have struggled for our customers to get on the program and stay on the program. And so we really need to take a look at our program and see where our opportunities might be and what some of those differences are. So other than that, our numbers there are looking good.
I think most of us understand the e-billing participant. Can you do a quick?
Absolutely.
What the budget bill?
The budget billing is an opportunity where we take a look at the customer's average use for the last 12 months and create more or less a flat amount each month. It might fluctuate a little bit, but the idea is that instead of seeing the big swings in your bill as a result of weather, it's averaged and levelized through the year.
Monica, I was on budget bill for a while, several years ago, and I will just share with you, I didn't really understand. I understood how you got to the number that I was paying every month, but I didn't get how it related to whether I had money, to my favor, or if I was paying less than what I was really using. So that was really difficult for me to understand the way it was presented. And even when I ran my own numbers, it didn't really make sense. So then I went off.
Yeah, and
so
that might be what I think
we'll
we'll end up doing some focus groups and understanding for people that were on and then came off and people that are on. I think that we probably do have an opportunity in our program design. And so that's one of the things we'll be looking at this year. Okay?
Very good, thank you.
As far as our electronic payments, as you can see, the industry best practice for first quartile is about 51%. Year to date, we are at around 58% and doing quite well there, so we are continuing to work on that. First contact resolution. This is an area that actually we performed quite well in our J.D. Power survey as far as how our customers rated our first contact resolution. Yet you'll see here that we have a goal that we're falling a little bit below what our target is. So I wanted to share the difference. Typically in the industry, when they measure first contact resolution, they take the actual phone call or the interaction that you're measuring and saying, was your issue resolved? The answer is yes, you get first contact resolution. When you measure it that way, we're performing at 80%. We have decided to take a more holistic approach and challenged ourselves even further to say, is this your first contact with us? So if you tried resolving your matter with us before and were not successful doing that, and you have now called us and we have resolved it on this call, that's great that we resolved it on the call, but we're not giving ourselves credit for first contact resolution because it wasn't initially resolved. That's why these numbers appear to be lower. We've really set the bar with a higher challenge. Our team is really stepping up to that. We monitor the results as we get the immediate surveys back. Anything that gets below a 50, a score of 50, which is arbitrary, but below a certain score, we actually have a supervisor or a manager contact the customer. We look to get feedback, understand the opportunity, and we gather that feedback. Is this a policy issue? Is it a training issue? Is it a process opportunity? How can we get better? And so we're working on that. I am very confident that we're going to see this number continue to grow as we keep that focus, and that will only help us in our efficiency as well as our customer satisfaction.
Monica, have you got any, what I guess would be incidents where, when we're making this extra effort to talk to the customer, have there been some little vignettes that you could share with us with how the customer is taking our new change in attitude?
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, I received an email right before coming to this meeting from a customer. It was forwarded on to me, who was just absolutely wowed with the experience and the attention and positive results in the quality as well as the time that was given, the extra effort to resolve the problem. And we're actually seeing those more frequently now, which is really fantastic. And when you think about a customer taking the time to put a call in or to email simply to say thank you, job well done, that's pretty phenomenal too. And so I would say we're definitely seeing a high volume in that. And customers really recognizing that. And I think the employees feel really good about it too. Employees are equally sharing feedback about when they're hearing good news stories from their neighbor or from people, and you really see that, that pride of service growing. So that's really fantastic.
It's where you get the sustainability.
Yes. Oops. Employee volunteering, we also have set a pretty lofty goal for 2014 to match our 2013 numbers and the number of JEA employees that volunteer in the community. 2013 was a record year. We are on track to hit that. Our employee volunteer of the month is Owen from our water and wastewater, or from our wastewater team. And in December, he led a toy drive for JEA, as well as an Adopt a Family. And here's another picture of a different employee group. JEA employees contributed over 3,500 toys to the holiday toy drive and adopted over 15 families to provide Christmas for them. So just really fantastic. For our communications channel, also with our new J.D. Power numbers, the ones on this slide are still reflective of pre-Wave 2, but our customers did note improved recall from our communications, and that moved up to 52% from 47% from our last survey. So we were quite excited about that. Our net write-offs are still looking good. You'll see up there the first quartile for the national benchmark is about 0.83%. We are year-to-date at 0.12%. I know that that December line looks a little alarming, but I do just want to share that we are below the number that we were last December. So typically December and January are our higher months. We're still well in line and doing better than last year. As far as our improvement efforts, this is just a quick snapshot. Obviously, we have lots of them, but since the last time I was here sharing with you, we did make another change to our deposit policy where we have reduced what is called the telecommunications, energy, and cable credit score for customers. So now if you have a score of 350 or better, a deposit is waived. It used to be 400 or better. We actually believe that that'll be about 3,500 customers a year when they're starting service that will no longer be required to give us a deposit. We believe there's pretty minimal risk with those customers as well. We did receive several customer complaints about lack of availability of talking to a supervisor or manager when they have an issue. We've changed our processes, created a queue to create that availability and allow customers to get to supervisors and managers quicker. We are going through all of our letters and making them more customer friendly. About half of them are complete so far, as you will see here. And we recently strengthened our JEA.com username and password protocol to protect our customers' information, which is also critical to customer satisfaction. Yet we did so in a way in addressing some of the common items that annoy customers and where they have issues, where we took out the I's and the L's and the number ones and where there's confusion. So again, just a few examples of some smaller improvements, and I think all of that together, there are countless more improvements. You don't get the movement we get on J.D. Power with just a few things. Just really fantastic effort happening across the organization.
Great.
So.
Comments? Questions? What is our deposit? If you're a new person, what is our?
What we do is we'll run a credit score through the we actually don't do your credit bureau score. We do a telecommunications, energy, and cable score. If you score above a certain score, no deposit is required. If you score below a certain score, then a deposit is required, and it is, I believe it's 2 months utility bill.
2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then the opportunity after so long.
Yes.
The record they can.
After 24 months of good payment history, you can get your deposit returned. And then if you're an existing customer and we do not have a deposit or you're under deposited, if you get a significant number of infractions like insufficient funds, a certain number of disconnects, then we will assess deposits at that point.
Great. Comment? My only thought was, having heard what Gainesville did with their new rate increase, I would make sure that you get no phone calls from the JEA, from the Gainesville. We're not losing you to Gainesville. I think they need you down there. It's $17.50 a month for what they're gonna need something down there. That's unbelievable. Thank you.
Thank you.
The only thing is, Mike, there was, and I want to just kind of capture this. I was talking with Paul, and I'm glad he clarified it. We're looking at, under the electric, in June of 2015 is when we were going to see some of the CO2 EPA new restrictions, new regulations coming in. Is that correct? Wait, Paul? Can you kind of,
For existing units?
Yes, that we're seeing those come at us, which are going to probably have some impact on us, correct? For
Yes.
the CO2. Can you kind of just keep us informed? Some of us will not be here, but I don't want us to, for our board, for our colleagues to be shocked. If you can kind of get us to prepare them for what we are going to be seeing for the
Absolutely.
CO2 new EPA rules. I think they're pretty significant, so if you can kind of give us a quick overview to let us know what our board members or our colleagues are going to be faced with, and our customers.
Right now?
No, at some point, but no, just as we get closer,
Y'all recall Ted Hobson at the last meeting did a good high-level
Right.
overview of a number of risk items. There's at least half a dozen emerging regulatory items that are coming down the pipe. That's probably the biggest one. It is the biggest one.
Yeah.
And a week or two ago, the law was put in place for new units that essentially outlaws coal plants in the United States moving forward in terms of the emission standards that have been set based on the current technology. So what's due out this year in June is a similar rule for existing units. And we not sure what that's going to look like. We'll certainly stay on top of it and watch it and monitor it.
Okay.
And communicate to the board.
Yeah, it's going to have both a customer, there's going to be a financial impact. I know that our members of our boards are very concerned about that, so keep us in the queue for that.
We'll do, Mike.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, on that point, I think next month at our luncheon pre-board, we'll tee that and a number of the other air emission and water issues facing the electric system up for discussion.
Good. I want to know our folks to thank you. Thank you all, both Mike, Brian, and Monica. Thanks. Want to now, Melissa, you're going to kind of bring us up to speed and bring some clarity. You've probably heard joint development agreement between JEA and Sempra, U.S. Gas and Power. I want to make sure there's been some miscommunication, so motion is, I think, first start doing due diligence as opposed to doing an agreement. So, yeah.
That's an important clarification.
Very important part. I want to make sure that we start there so that we go from there.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm in 3B5 of the agenda. And what I'll do is provide a little bit of history as to how we got to where we are now and what our proposal is moving forward for discussion and input from the board. As part of our strategic planning process last year, we identified business excellence as one of our key areas of focus at JEA. And part of that identified growing revenues and reducing expenses as specific goals for the organization, recognizing some of the challenges that we're facing with respect to utility sales, that they're fundamentally changing and we have some big challenges that are out there. One of the most significant risks to our business, which we've just discussed, is pending environmental regulations. Those regulations have the potential to threaten our continuing operation of our solid fuel units going forward. So how we position ourselves as a risk management tool against those environmental regulations is to make sure that we've got sufficient capacity within the natural gas system, in whatever form that takes, to be able to ramp up natural gas generation if we have to, as a defense mechanism against those pending environmental regulations if it turns out we can't operate them our existing units the way that we have been. And I want to just give a quick example. This is not a theoretical limit. If you look at where we were 2 weeks ago when the polar vortex came in, it got very, very cold here in Jacksonville. Not as cold as we were expecting, thank goodness. But it got very, very cold, and there were periods of time during that polar vortex situation where we were limited from a physical gas delivery perspective, not only on the interstate pipeline, which we'll get some relief from in 2016 when that expansion comes online, but we're also limited on our local distribution network because we were wanting to fire up all of our natural gas units at the same time because we had a lot of load because it was very cold. We couldn't do it. So this is not a theoretical limit. We were burning fuel oil during periods of time when it was that cold 2 weeks ago, and that is because of some of the physical infrastructure limitations that we have. So we've been working toward a way to fix those infrastructure limitations and thinking about it holistically as a regional solution, and not just thinking about our needs specifically, although as we've discussed in previous board meetings, we're by far the biggest user of natural gas in our region and will continue to be going forward. We've thought about not only our growing needs for natural gas, but also the needs in the transportation sector, which is an emerging sector within the natural gas market here in Northeast Florida. And we've entered into a strategic alliance with Sempra U.S. Gas and Power to help explore some of those regional natural gas solutions. Sempra's got $26 billion in market cap. They've got over 30 million customers in the natural gas and utility space. They have a significant experience from the wellhead to the burner tip in natural gas, including significant LNG experience. And therefore, we're a good strategic ally for us as we identify and explore these regional solutions. One area that we have been exploring under the memorandum of understanding that we had approved by the board several months ago is our participation in liquefied natural gas. In LNG could provide not only a backup fuel for our existing generating units, which would have helped in that polar vortex situation 2 weeks ago that we talked about, but also could be a significant marine transportation and land-based transportation fuel. And it's an opportunity for JEA to help advance our port through really a first-of-its-kind technology. This would be the first LNG facility at a port in the southeast region and would help strengthen the competitive position of the port. If JEA participates in the project, it could help us achieve our revenue goals. And not only looking at revenue, but thinking about the source of that revenue, it achieves diversification in revenue. So as we think about erosion in demand from our utility customers, this is a way for us to get revenue from a source that's not going to erode in the same way and provides us some better financial strength. It's not only good for JEA, it's good for our community, it brings jobs to our region, and would through this project or through any of our competitor projects that are out there. And speaking of competitors, there are some that have been in the media that have been discussed as recently as an hour ago, seeing some of my media counterparts that are here. But we believe that competition provides some great benefits for our region. It creates redundancy in fuel supply. So if there are customers of this type of fuel that make the significant investments they need to transition from a more traditional fuel source to LNG, they've got security in that supply by having more than one supplier available. It could lead to price competitiveness and greater reliability overall for LNG in our region. We are at this point, and Sempra have completed some preliminary diligence on the project. And what we'd like to do with the board's blessing and with further discussion is take the next step in our due diligence process. At this point, we're working on site selection. A final site has not been identified yet. It could be co-located with a JEA generating facility, or it could be a separate site independent of JEA. A co-located site would have the benefit of an additional revenue source for JEA, since any land that's used in connection with this would be at market rates. And in our diligence, we've identified this project wouldn't be eligible for tax-exempt financing or any of the other things that I think we've heard some community discussion about. What we would like to do is move forward with a joint development agreement that is the next step in the process with Sempra. It doesn't commit us to investment in the project. What it does is outlines the step to get from here to that next decision point about whether or not JEA will participate in this project. So again, this is not an investment commitment. What it is an agreement that outlines the specific project agreements that will govern this project when we get to that final investment, shovel in the ground, construction type stage moving forward. It outlines the management structure for the process and some cost sharing. It'll allow us to get through the design and development phases of the project, to understand and get through the permitting process and get to the point where we are really ready for construction, and we've checked all the boxes that we need to check to be able to understand where we're going moving forward. And so with that, and then the development budget that's proposed in this agenda item for the board is not to exceed $2.5 million. And that's to get us to a shovel-ready project where we'll be able to then come back to the board and with further discussion, decide whether or not we move forward with this project. So with that, I'd like to open it up to questions and further discussion.
I think, since it is an action item, I think what I'd like to do is go ahead and get a motion in a second, and we can open up.
So moved.
Moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion. Questions? Board members?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I think from the feedback we've gotten from the public, this is a very hot topic, right? And I think it's very important for us to either underscore, I know Melissa's already shared with us, what this is not as much as it is what this is, right? And one of the things I want to be clear, because I've heard of some folks concerned about us getting into the retail sale business and competing as a government entity, and that's not what this does at all. And I don't know if there's some words we can put to underscore that, but a lot of things that have bubbled up to the surface that have come forth through the press and through other sources have been to lack of information or misinformation. And I think one of the things we want to make sure we do today is make sure we set the record straight on a couple of those things. And that one sticks out to me as one that's front and center.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I might say, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, however, I think she's made it very clear what it is. So if we start saying what it isn't, I'm just wondering whether we're getting into a trap there. So I recognize it, respect that, but I think you made it very clear what it is.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
You are, yes. Question.
I guess I'm kind of in the middle between what I'm hearing from my colleagues, because on the one hand, I agree that you have done a good job outlining what you plan to do. I am concerned about making sure it's clear what we're not doing. But I'm also troubled what the difference is and why do we need a new agreement? We have a memorandum of understanding currently, right? So maybe what I need you to do is explain to me I've read what's here, but what's different about the MOU versus the new agreement that you're talking about? And why do we need a separate one if we've already entered into some form of agreement with Sempra?
I think that's a great question. Our MOU is a very, very short agreement that generally says, basically, we're going to hold hands and sing songs and explore some of these opportunities at a very high level, and lists 4 different opportunities that we're going to generally take a look at. And we are still generally taking a look at those other opportunities that are in the MOU. What the joint development agreement does is it really puts some more meat on the bones in terms of how are we pushing this thing forward to get to a more complete project development place.
I guess from a legal standpoint, and maybe we need to defer this to counsel if they're in the room, but as an attorney, I work with the 2 documents all the time, and I don't know why. It seems to me that we are, by establishing another agreement, we are making more decisions along this track when none of this is really, well, maybe I'll give her a moment to walk in. We have a question that you may...
Timing is everything, Counselor.
Counselor, you may be the only person that can provide insight. I'm sure others have insight, but my question has to do with why we need a new agreement. We have an MOU with Sempra, and we have, as she said, evolved that agreement to a certain level, and now we're entertaining, or the board is being asked to basically enter into a new agreement. And it says agreement, so it's a little more concerning to me than the MOU. And I know that MOUs can be utilized in so many different ways that the language of this is that we're now entering into, what are we calling it, a development agreement, which implies that we have decided on certain things, that we're in agreement with them, and those things are a part of this document. So I needed the clarity on that.
So perhaps the name clarification on the name would be of assistance. The reason this is coming to the board at this time is because there is an expenditure of funds, but aside from that, there is a decision-making process being put in place for JEA to bring the actual decision to you. So at this point, what they would be doing due diligence, of which half of the cost would be spent by someone else, and there'd be this structure for decision-making. And it's that structure of decision-making that really would be, that they'd want your imprinter on to ensure that you're comfortable with jointly making the decisions on the preliminary engineering and
Okay.
kind of key elements.
I think I follow you, but typically when the board is presented with these things, we are given a cost outline in terms of, what we expect it will cost. So can somebody generally tell us what we anticipate the due diligence part of this agreement to cost us?
I don't have the financial elements of that. I can give you the key elements, of course, are site, the typical due diligence available with the site and some preliminary permitting issues, things of that nature.
So we don't have any numbers on?
Well, I'm just saying, don't
Maybe
ask to weigh the
somebody
math.
$2.5
million
max, I thought. Yeah.
Not to exceed
Not to
2.5.
exceed.
So are we
That's right.
saying we're going to spend 2.5 to explore this?
Half of it, this is, a preliminary engineering expenditure requires certain very expensive matters, such as surveys, environmental concern, permitting of those types of things, and the relative cost for the preliminary engineering, and which I call engineering, the preliminary due diligence, would be half. You'd be sharing, so you get half of that, and the benefits of moving forward without an obligation to actually marry this partner. Neither one of you are obligated to each other.
I guess
But
my concern, though, is if we aren't married, if you will, to this partner for sure, if we don't know that there aren't others that we might consider for a project such as this, are we premature in forming an agreement with them specifically? I mean, I recognize that the due diligence from the engineering part needs to be done, but do we want to necessarily commit to do it with Sempra, because does that imply something going forward?
Well, perhaps it is that they're
I'm just concerned because of the nature of the terminology that we have here and what we're allocating to spend. There would be some assumption that we've made a commitment with Sempra.
Let me try a different way of asking the question. Not to exceed the 2.5. Okay. In order for us to make some decision with some partner down the road, I'm taking this next step of due diligence is there is going to have to be some exploration or some due diligence of site and everything that we're going to have to do before we can say, I don't think we can do it with you. I mean, what I'm saying is there's got to be, we're going to have to invest something, some payout with this person at least that explores whether or not this is even feasible. They're the ones that we had the first MOU with, but
You're entirely correct, because think of it this way.
in other words, we can't do it by ourselves. We're going to have to do it with someone else in order to do the due diligence.
Correct.
Okay, then that leads me, I think, to the issue that I'm going to play devil's advocate from what I was with the information that I've heard.
Yes.
Maybe I should say, if we were to partner and invest this 2.5 with this person that's going to help us do the due diligence, okay, at what point, I'm going to use the wrong terminology, is there still the opportunity for one of these other entities that are out there to have an opportunity to come and say, we'd like to be a partner? Is there some point down the road? I think that's the issue. I think that may be the issue that nobody's talking about here.
Two issues. Certainly, this agreement does not obligate you to this entity beyond the preliminary due diligence. Nothing further. So any other entity, if there is one out there that is economically viable and in the game, certainly JEA would be looking at that.
So if there's another site that they want to do and they want to we want to think about possibly exploring that, you would be coming back to us with an MOI, an MOU, to say we want to explore a different site or something as well.
No, the value on this development agreement is in your own home court, you're identifying first the property that you own and control.
Okay.
That's the value, is half of the value from somebody else in doing due diligence on a complex project, at least starting with the property that you control. JEA will come out of this regardless of whether it goes forward with Sempra or someone else, with a far greater knowledge of where a plan should be sited, what the permitting obligations are and things of that nature, and then free to choose what's best in the public's interest. If it's another competitor, then it is. But
the
it's
key
a
point
site
here is
selection.
this is our piece of property. What I'm trying to do.
You want to start with
is-
your properties,
Yeah,
and
what I'm really
then,
trying to do is find those, if I can, those nuggets of information that bring
Yes, sir.
clarity to the misinformation or the miscommunication that's going out there. That's what I'm
Right,
looking
I
at.
agree. And to that point, if it benefits JEA, and I agree, to have the due diligence done, and certainly to have someone partner with us for the cost of it. What does that imply to Sempra? Does they, you know what I'm saying? I just want to make sure that everyone is transparent in a deal like that, because we're not committing that we are going to do anything with them.
Correct.
Simply because they absorb a lot of the cost. And I know that's done, in a lot of procurement issues, you'll prepare expensive things to try and compete. But they are doing that, I'm sure in anticipation of working with us, and no others have had to bear those costs. So when we decide about going forward, is there any expectation on their part that because of their involvement and the cost sharing that they will have? Do you follow me?
I do, because
that's the kind of stuff that we are troubled and wanting to be sure is publicly understood.
right. I want to make clear that they cannot be repaid for this portion. They can't, if you come at the end and decide that you want to get out, they have put their money in. We expressly
Right, but
negotiated.
I just don't understand.
Right.
the
Well,
benefit.
big companies have, everything's relative, right? And so, JEA certainly has a record of doing things right, and it has some key pieces of property.
Mhm.
This is a company that financially is capable of putting this much money in and walking away if we say we don't want to go any further. And those were expressed discussions because, of course, they're smart people. They tried to recover their costs in the event that we said no, and we said no. I mean, there you have it, and so we prevailed on that point.
Good question.
Councilman Bishop.
Did you have, Councilman? Do you have a question or a statement?
A little of both.
Okay. Yes. You're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This discussion kind of piggybacks on what we were talking a little bit about earlier, and it leads. Oh, I'm sorry, that's my bad. Sorry about that. Technology is a wonderful thing. Couple of things. What appears to me to still remain to be unsaid, at least affirmatively, is that what is being talked about is constructing an LNG plant. I think I'm right on that. Is that correct? Okay. Nobody has actually said those words yet. It's all we've been dancing around the subject. And that goes to my earlier point about transparency of purpose. That's okay. That's not a big deal. The intention here, however, is Mr. Wimbush made a statement that to the effect that JEA is not intending to get into competition with private business. Yet Melissa's comments said something to the effect about potentially supplying the transportation industry and helping promote the port. As we all know, the port is a landlord port. It is not an operating port. All activity that takes place is done by tenants who are private businesses. Therefore, who are the customers being referred to here? By inference would be the private tenants on the port who run ships and trains and trucks and all of that. To the best of my understanding, that is not a regulated utility customer base. Therefore, one could infer from those discussions that the intention is that JEA, through this agreement, could be competing with private business, despite what may be said to the contrary. That's a point of concern. The other point of concern here is not necessarily that JEA wants to get into an agreement with Sempra. The question is, how was Sempra selected? Was there an open RFP to respond to? Was this a negotiated discussion? Was this sort of an ad hoc relationship? That is not known at the moment. As one who deals with the public sector in my private business world, one would expect a large public potential contract or exploration of a contract where public funds are expended. In this case, I'm understanding to the tune of $2.5 million. There would have been some sort of RFP out there that anybody who is in this business could solicit that, as opposed to what appears to be some sort of an inside negotiated deal. Now, I may be wrong on that. I don't know how that happened, because it appears that there is an MOU in place and has been for some time. And it also appears that there have been discussions and negotiations, or at least drafting of an agreement to expand on that to actually do something. I don't know where all of that came from, and I think there's lack of clarity on that. All of these points go to the lack of transparency in this process from the public perspective. And I think if those questions are not answered or that information is not put forward, that's going to cast a cloud on this whole endeavor. And I don't think that's a good idea, because at the end of the day, I am in total agreement that JEA needs to diversify its power sources, its fuel sources, because of all the reasons that have been discussed. It is a very good thing for JEA to get into some sort of strategic alliance for a readily available large supply of gas. And I would hope that that need doesn't get trampled under the background noise of all of these other things, just simply because nobody knows what's going on. And from the man on the street view of those who are paying attention to this sort of thing, we don't know what's going on, and we would like to know. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll conclude my comments. Thank you.
Well, I think the question's been raised, so I mean, is there someone who can kind of give us a quick of how we got into originally, how that was, I mean, Paul?
Yeah, no, I can, absolutely.
I mean, the President Bishop raised an issue I think needs to be addressed.
I think, well, as part of the strategic planning process and as part of operating the electric grid, which is heavily reliant on natural gas, we had identified two key areas. One, we needed more gas pipeline capacity into the region. And two, we needed better infrastructure within the region. In order to do that, we've looked in the past and partnered with others. At the time we were involved in that evaluation, we had several folks, Sempra was one, call on us and talk about providing power and water to an LNG facility, and that we started talking about just the strategy and of natural gas, the growing use of natural gas in the industrial sector. They started sharing with us the tremendous opportunity that many other communities were being advantaged by having a strong natural gas partner. When we evaluated that, we looked around and saw that Northeast Florida in particular Jacksonville, wasn't necessarily being served well by the existing and the incumbent infrastructure. In fact, we're falling behind. There are a number of transactions that from an industrial, particularly the industrial space, being done in other areas that are creating jobs and economic value and bringing activity and manufacturing back on shore. We are not able to participate in that. So essentially one conversation led to another. We met with the folks primarily on the service and then just exploring various options. We felt that there was a good cultural fit. We ensured that we had the Office of General Counsel with us at all times in terms of all negotiations, in terms of conversations rather with Sempra. And we decided that there would be a pretty good fit with them. We weren't being served quite well with the existing incumbent gas provider. Certainly from an advanced thinking standpoint, Sempra with its capacity and its large footprint nationally and internationally appeared to, again, from the wellhead to the burner tip, have a lot of things to offer us. We had historically partnered very successfully with a number of large utility operations, whether it was Florida Power and Light, Southern Company, Duke Energy and other municipals thought this would be appropriate to make an agreement between ourselves, an level of understanding. We documented that in a memorandum and continued to talk about three paths. One was more pipeline capacity. How could we best construct that to serve the needs of the port for LNG and other transportation fuels? How might Jacksonville position itself better, and might there be a leader to bring the community together to look at CNG, compressed natural gas for landside transportation? How could we look at this in terms of building capacity for electric generation today, which we needed, and expanding capacity, and to hedge the future as we think we'll be transitioning out of solid fuel over the next decade, given the regulatory regime and mandates we'll be receiving from Washington over the next several years. All of those led us to focus on a couple things. One, we're talking about the pipeline, growing that capacity, and what's the best way to do that, whether JEA should do it on its own, whether we should do it with the incumbent, whether we should do it with Sempra, whether we should do it with clean energy, and all of the above. I think the all of the above strategy in that case makes a lot of sense because it in essence spreads the cost, and our ratepayers benefit from that. In the LNG area, as we were bringing more gas in, this was potential electric load, as well as we have a good bit of land, and we talked about another agenda, and we've got a cleaned up piece of property, and the difficulty we've had marketing that. We've got a couple of heavy industrial sites that we saw an opportunity to release some value there at market rates if they were utilized in an LNG facility or plant. And so we proposed talking and exchanging some ideas about how that might be located, how it might be co-located with electric generation, and how it might longer term provide backup as a fuel source for electric generation, our electric generating facilities, either at Kennedy or Northside, or as it further emerges down the road. At that point, we thought it probably a good thing in terms of if Sempra was going to move forward and construct a facility here, if we, as JEA and as a representative of the community, could participate in that endeavor, and by that we could lower the cost of our pipeline, we could benefit by a backup source, we could benefit from a land lease at market rates, we could benefit from the overall investment if that's appropriate and comes within the design of the structure and the transaction. And we just looked at it as a very positive for the community in terms of a public-private partnership that was going to invest here in Jacksonville in a big way and allowed us to participate in and benefit both our ratepayers and the community. We still think that. I think one of the big challenges that we have, and I'll use the collective we from JEA, Sempra, Clean, and I think several others, this is not a cookie-cutter design. This is not a cookie-cutter project, and so what it is not is a 7FA gas turbine that we're going to clear the site and put a turbine on and connect some wire to that we know we have some pretty hard costs up front going into. This is sort of a build-to-spec design. Yes, I think the technology is there, but the siting, the location, and some of the other opportunities this presents need to be worked through in developing a full comprehensive investment plan, investment program. So it's been tough to talk a little bit about absolute specifics at this point in time. That's what the development and the work in terms of utilizing the intellectual knowledge that Sempra has and that we share in and put together a good public-private partnership. And that's sort of, I guess, where we are today in terms of having moved down this path. We think, as Melissa points out, in the Northeast Florida, certainly in the port area, and then really as this fuel source maybe goes landside, having competition is good for the market. Having a redundant, utility, reliable operations in terms of backup and redundancies is good for the market and good for the community as well. The deal, as discussed and structured, is at market rates. It's market, we talked in terms of market terms for any land lease to a potential entity, and market rates throughout the entire investment cycle. One of the challenges, again, we've had in terms of the absolute definition at the spreadsheet level of cost. That's why we're getting together in the development agreement to sort of work through those budget issues and come in with the best low cost and program.
Yes.
I have a question. Since we have our esteemed general counsel with us now, and you've been involved in all of the, pretty much all the process from beginning to where we are now, I would presume if you felt that there was any sort of violation of due process, that you would have raised that red flag, but I don't want to assume anything, so can
That's
you
correct.
address that?
No, that's correct. I believe the development agreement that's presently in front of you is appropriate, should you exercise your policy call to do it.
So in terms of an RFP or any of that sort of thing?
Not necessary for JEA when it's developing a power source in the manner, such as SJRPP, Scherer, all of Duke, all of the others they've done.
Thank you.
Just let me finish from a board first. Cal?
Actually, the agreement itself is not in our materials. Is that something that we would have access to, or is that by?
Through the chair, certainly. Typically, it's a delegation of authority with the parameters, but of course.
Okay.
Of course.
And I don't know if you know this, maybe Melissa does, but as far as the investment and the 2.5 million, if there was not a final investment decision with Sempra, does JEA have free reign to use all of the information?
Yes.
That actually the 5 million or whatever, the total budget amount for both parties to look at the site and the project, does JEA have access to all of that information for its own use if it goes with a different partner?
Yes, we would own those. They'd be site-specific, and the first two that we're looking at to JEA's financial advantage are JEA's properties. And so that was part of that negotiation. They want to get bought out from it, and we said, no, I mean, it's not useful to anybody but us, so we should be able to keep it all. So we do have the right to do that.
Okay. Thanks.
Question? Yes, sir.
Just briefly, thank you, Mr. McElroy, for the explanation. Speaking from the council's perspective, that's probably the best one that I've heard about where all of this came from and what you're trying to do, and I think all of that is a very good thing. I would caution the board, however, on a couple of things. Number one, that regardless, legalities aside or not, I personally believe that it is bad public policy to spend a tremendous amount of public dollars on something that could lead to a contract without some sort of open solicitation process. It's just not a good idea. The other part is, with respect to what ultimately gets done, there is a component of this that is for JEA's use. And so whatever tax advantages can be done as a result of partnering with a public agency, I believe we obviously want to take advantage of that for the ratepayers of the city. When it comes to the other side of the private side of the public-private partnership, if there are components of this that JEA is not directly going to be in the business of, per se, selling LNG to trucking companies, for example, whether they are or they aren't, any aspect of that generates a tax advantage to one entity that others can't participate in, that's problematic. At best, it's also problematic from the standpoint of how you select that partner. From a public policy perspective, needs to be done in an open solicitation process so that all who are in that business have an equal opportunity to provide those services in a competitive marketplace, and whoever ends up with that gets it because it's a fair and equitable process. That's my big concern, that we do not want to be in the business of picking favorites. Without some sort of an open and objective public selection process. I believe that is paramount to the integrity of the process, to the integrity of the organization, and the integrity of the city as a whole. Thank you.
I do, I appreciate, one, thank you for your insight. And I understand your comments as you have stated them. What I would need help from General Counsel and from the CEO and for anyone that's in the audience is, and I want to make sure that in the past, when we have had arrangements with other vendors, power sources, and we've done that. This was about our piece of property. If I remember correctly, when we've done either nuclear or other things that we have had with General Counsel's help, an understanding that if they brought us an idea and we worked through it, that we would explore that to the point that we would then make a statement about what our next steps would be, correct? So I want to make, and I get the part about the RFP, but when we have explored other opportunities, at least my memory here, the last 14 years, it has not been uncommon for us to have explored that up until the point that we have made a decision. Where, and I understand what the councilman is saying, when we follow this and we come back and we have done this due diligence and they've spent 2.5 and we've spent 2.5, which is, and again, I need some help here from someone. This is not the first time that we have had this kind of investment in testing out what we were going to do with no hopes, with no expectation. Before, we felt that we had to spend some money to do the due diligence so that we could make an informed decision. Is that correct? This will not be the first time that we have had an expenditure of JEA funds to due diligence. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that why we're making points for the record, correct? With some of our major, I mean, that's my understanding. I mean, this is not a new approach that we're taking.
You typically do share, at least way back in SGRPP when I was a baby lawyer. And that's how it was done, and your main concern was getting some advantage, certainly leveraging your money, but controlling the site and controlling in your territory the provision of a natural utility. So that's when JEA looked at these things with Shera, when they looked at it with others, you look at it from your standpoint of what benefits you, and you try to get some cost recovery, because due diligence on matters of this complex is always expensive.
You know, Mike, the devil's going to be in the details on how this joint venture is put together. Simplistic, in its most simple form, you just have a 50-50 venture and you share in it. We may not be able to do that. We may be able to provide the natural gas, the land, and the electricity and get benefit for that, and Sempra's on its own as far as the LNG sales. That way, we're not competing on LNG sales, but we did find a use for the land. We did find a use for the electricity that we have an excess amount of right now, and we helped improve our natural gas infrastructure. Maybe that's as far as we can go, but you need to spend some money to figure that out and see, first of all, if the land's even useful, whether you can get it permitted, whether you can use the right-of-way that we already have to bring the natural gas lines through, and, you know, just all those details that we have to go through. But joint venture, everybody's jumping to the conclusion that this is just going to be a joint venture and JEA is going to be selling LNG. We may not be. That may be Sempra doing that. Sempra is a public company, and they have every right to come into our market and sell natural gas and provide a natural gas facility. And if they want to lease the land from us and buy electricity from us and help guarantee a certain takedown of natural gas that helps us in our natural gas needs, then that's a huge benefit to us as well. And we would provide that to anybody else. What we are not going to provide is a monopoly for anybody.
Right.
Including ourselves. But again, those details have to be worked out. So we don't know what those joint venture details are going to be. They could be a lot different than people are assuming right now.
I think well said. I agree with the support proceeding on the due diligence. I think it's good comments.
I think we need to call the question.
Yeah.
All right. Question's been called. You've heard the discussion. All in favor of the moving forward on the second phase of a joint development agreement between JEA and Sempra U.S. Gas Power, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Show it unanimously passed.
Good discussion.
Thank you. Number 6, rating agency new issue report in conjunction with the upcoming electric system series 3 2014A sub 2014 series A refunding bonds. Melissa, you're up. Continuing. Thanks.
This agenda item was provided to give the board an update on the rating agency commentary following our meetings in December, and also in response to a specific question that was passed along from the board about how the rating agencies view our contributions to the city of Jacksonville. In summary, the ratings reports, which are provided in full text behind this agenda item, were very positive. The rating agencies have all updated those electric system reports and all affirmed our existing ratings in the electric system, in spite of some concerns that we discussed during our meetings in December. So that's great news. We had a refunding transaction that was in the market last week. It was Joe Orfano's first transaction as JEA treasurer. He's here in the audience today. And it was wildly successful. JEA had the highest present value savings in terms of dollar amount ever in a refunding transaction. It wasn't the highest percentage, but it was the highest dollar amount present value savings ever. So that was a tremendous transaction for JEA, and it was driven by the strength of our credit ratings, which were just recently affirmed. On page 1 of the PowerPoint that's behind this agenda item, what we've done is just summarized where we are in terms of contribution relative to our peers at similar credit ratings. So this is a list of AA-rated utilities that Fitch publishes, and they compiled where we are in terms of our transfers. In this scale, in the little graphic that's provided, the top of it would be low transfers and the bottom is the highest. And as you'll see in that graphic that's there, we are third from the bottom in terms of high transfers. There's only 2 utilities that are rating in the country that are higher than where we are currently. On page 2, we've provided some excerpts in terms of comments from the rating agencies regarding our transfer specifically. And these are brief quotes, so I'll just go ahead and read them. Fitch's comment is that the combination of the 2 figures, and those 2 figures that they're referencing are our franchise fee and our transfer to the city in the form of contribution, accounted for about 11% of total operating revenues in fiscal 2013, more than twice the percentage typically transferred by similarly rated retail systems. While the annual transfer amount has thus far been manageable for JEA, any meaningful escalation beyond 2016 resulting from the mounting pressure to address the city's large unfunded pension liability would be viewed negatively. And that's an excerpt from their most recent report, which is included as an attachment. Standard & Poor's says the business...
Would you want to repeat that, please?
The bold is added for emphasis by me, was not included in the Fitch report. That's on that page. The Fitch report says the business profile reflects our assessment of the utility's competitive position, which low rates afford despite substantial contributions to Jacksonville's general fund. And Moody's says when a transfer policy represents a substantial portion of the utility's own revenues, this could have a negative rating impact if it produces uncompetitive electric rates or leaves limited internal funds available for utility operations, maintenance, or repairs. On page 3 of the package, we provide the Moody's scorecard, which gives you, Moody's is probably the most formulaic of the 3 agencies in terms of how they assign our rating. And so this scorecard is what they use to determine our credit rating. And as you'll see, we have a couple of outliers on there. Our first is with respect to rate competitiveness. At higher credit ratings, utilities are typically lower than the median by a more significant margin than we are, and so that's an outlier. And our debt ratio, no surprise to anyone on the board now, it continues to be an outlier from a credit rating perspective. The second line there is a willingness and ability to recover costs, which captures the general fund transfer. And we are in line there with respect to utilities rating, their AA rating methodology, but that will continue to be an area of focus for Moody's in assigning our credit rating. Any questions about that agenda item?
No.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. That concludes our agenda. Under new business, we have a new agenda topic, and that is the St. Johns County JE interlocal agreement settlement. Paul, if you would like to present this to the board, I think each of you around has a copy of it in front of you.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I apologize to the board for the
Kind
late.
of give a quick
late
background of how
entree to
long we've
this.
been doing this.
We've been up to negotiations with the county now for almost 2 years to resolve the payment, which is tied to, which is a fee that we pay the county, approximately 5% of billable revenues for water and sewer services delivered within their county. It's part of a 30-year agreement to serve the county. The first 10 years expired in 2012. We had a dispute in terms of the amount, of course, and quite obviously, the county thought we should pay more. We thought we should pay less. 2 years of mediation, negotiations ensued. We have settled on a number which I'm bringing to the board for approval today of $725,000. The number was in excess of $2 million at one point in time. The 725 settles all open items past and future, and also structures a more reasonable go-forward true-up mechanism where we'll come together each year and true up the amount that we actually billed, the fee we made against the estimate, and we'll keep things much more tightly controlled for both parties. The commission, the county commission has approved this settlement and forwarded to us for our acceptance and approval.
Okay. You've heard the explanation. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Show it passed unanimously. Old business, any old business? All right, reports, managing directors, before we get to the chairs.
Just a couple of points we had over the last couple of weeks. We ran town hall meetings to all of the employees. I met with all of the employees over a week. We had 13 meetings at the various locations, well-attended, good dialogue in terms of questions and comments about how we might improve the work environment. We have taken all of the information, including our employee survey, which we ran last year, and we're underway analyzing that. We already have an action item to implement and work towards building our unbeatable team. So I thank everyone who participated in that. I'd like to circle back to Gainesville and just point out that the Gainesville increase at $17 is primarily as a result of a decision that their board made and drove to enter into the biomass electric generation. We, at the same time, were going down that path, and so we had a fully reviewed, ready-to-be-executed contract with a couple of major global firms, Duke Energy and one other provider. And looking at the economics and working with our board elected not to go forward with that. And Gainesville, because of their green, pushed forward. The board saved our customers many dollars over a period of time by not taking that initiative at the time, and Gainesville is, again, going to suffer the consequences. One of the issues, and to point out, is these decisions have very long tails. You make a decision, and Gainesville made their decision 5 years ago, and it catches up with the customer down the road. So some of these big environmental issues that we have coming down the road that are $200, $300, $400, $500 million issues, and then certainly the carbon even beyond that. To make the decision today, by the time it gets to the rates, it seems small now, but at one point in time the bill comes due. And so we will look forward to openly sharing all of that information and bringing the board up to speed on those. And thanks to Monica and the team, and really the rest for the J.D. Powers, the Wave 2, that was a great one. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. CEO, let me have Chairman's report. I had one thing, but I really need to share two, and it really kind of ties in with a kind of a bittersweet. As you all know, each of us come up for renomination or our terms. We are termed out. Unfortunately, in the case of our Vice Chair, Cynthia Austin, February she is termed out after 8 years. And she has served 2 years, 10 years really, because she took the place of someone else, so she's been with it 10 years. So we, under our rules, each February, we have, every 2 years, we have a nominating committee. And it has been the case in the past, the nominating committee is made up of past chairs. In this case, it will be Chairman Townsend, Chairman Austin, and myself. So we will have the morning of February 18th for the purpose of selecting and bringing a slate of officers for the regular meeting on the 18th, which is our next board meeting. I don't want to lose this opportunity to thank Cynthia for the 10 years. One, because of that, she served 2 terms, two-year terms as chair. Some of the things that Cynthia with Chairman Townsend did, that it was her who and Ron that kind of felt that we needed to, we talked about team building, strategic planning, but also behavioral norms. Coming in on the board after that, we spent a year of doing this together, learning about fiduciary responsibility, learning how to deal with each other. Interesting as any team building will go through, but it was also during that Cynthia teamed up with Ron and was insisted that had never been done, that we have a finance and audit committee. And that was something, candidly and unfortunately, was not unanimously decided by the board, but we were able to do it. And we think it has been one of the things from fiduciary responsibility, oversight, but also from an accountability. I think I want my hat off to both Chairman Austin and to Chairman Townsend. So while we were going to be sorry to see you leave, we understand that a gentleman by the name of Hussein Cumber, who is a senior officer with Flagler Companies, has been nominated by the mayor. Hopefully that will go through the Rules Committee at City Council. We hope that works out. But I think that is kind of an interesting thing that people often think, does one person or one vote ever make a difference? And I think when reviewing your record, Cynthia, both as chair and as a board member, I think part of your legacy is you, like Ron Townsend, your one vote and your thinking did change the way JEA does its work. And while we will miss you, your legacy will continue. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I have some words because I'm saving for next month. However, I want to say, because we agreed on the Finance and Audit Committee, I've been chairing for 4 years.
I took on board governance and did that part.
All right, well, now you understand why this is what this has been like. Seriously, thank you to both, and we wanted to kind of put that in perspective. Closing announcements. Board members, any comments before we adjourn?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
I
sir.
think that the rating agency comments that were shared by Monica should get wide distribution.
Thank you. Totally agree. Any other comments? Hearing none, we thank you all. We are adjourned.